Okay, Year 2. Now today we're going to make this piece of sculpture in the style of the artist Kandinsky. Now Kandinsky was a famous Russian artist who loved to use all different kinds of shapes and lines in his work. And today that's what we're going to do. So we're going to create what we call an abstract piece of sculpture. Abstract means that it isn't a picture of something, it's just lots of ideas and lots of lines and lots of shapes, okay? So that's what we're going to do. And to do this, we're going to use a few clay techniques that we've already looked at. We've learned how to make a slab by rolling out the clay to make like a tile. And we've also will use joining, so using scratch and slip to join two pieces of clay together. We're also going to be pressing into the clay to make patterns in it as well. Okay, so let's get started. Now let me move my clay over here. I've just made it, so it needs to dry. To do this lesson today, you will need your clay, a rolling pin, some water, and then at home you may not have this exact equipment, but you can use things that would replace them. So for example, I have a clay tool. At home you could use a blunt knife. I have some little stencils to print into my clay with, and I shouldn't think you have these at home, but you could use coins to press into the clay, you could use a stick to press into the clay, you could use the bottom of a glue stick that has a pattern on it. Anything that has a pattern on you could use to imprint into your clay. And at school we will also have the line rolling guides that help us to ensure that we don't roll our clay too thin. Don't worry if you haven't got those at school, at home, you just need to make sure you don't roll the clay too thin, okay? All right, so let's get started. Let's move everything off the board apart from the clay. And the first thing you're going to do is, as we did last week and the week before, you're just going to give your clay a squeeze to make sure it's nice and soft. And then you're going to break it into two equal pieces. It doesn't matter if they're not exactly equal. And remember, you can either tear the clay or just cut it like I have. And then the first thing we're going to do is make the slab, which is the tile on the table. So I'm going to put my rolling guides close together because the rolling guides shouldn't be any wider than the rolling pin, otherwise it won't work. So I'm going to put the two together, roll it in one direction, backwards and forwards, lift it off, and then I'm going to roll it in the other direction, backwards and forwards. Keep rolling until it's nice and flat. Okay, there we go. I think that's a nice flat piece of clay now. So, there I have it. Now I want to make it into a nice even shape. I'm going to cut mine into a rectangle. So I'm just going to cut around the messy edges with my knife or with my clay tool. Going to straighten those edges so it's the same straight edge all the way around. It's up to you. You might want to turn yours into a circle or whatever. You might want to use a pot to draw around. You might want to use a square plate or container to make it into the correct shape. So I've made my slab, which is when we roll, and then I just want to smooth off the edges. So I dip my finger in the water and smooth around the edges to make it nice and flat and smooth. Okay. And then I'm going to think about the nice shapes that I could make on my sculpture. So if we can look at Kandinsky's work, I will show you those in the lesson. I've used a spiral, a triangle, a rainbow shape or an oval. I've used a round cylinder shape, all sorts of things. It's up to you to decide. So I'm going to take another piece of clay, and I think I'm going to start by making a square shape. So I'm going to use my finger and thumb, both fingers and thumbs, to just press the clay into the shape that I want. I want it to be a square, so I'm just going to keep pressing until I'm happy with the shape. I press it on all sides, keep turning the clay so each side is pressed into the right shape. Okay, and then it should be a nice smooth fit like that. Okay, and then, so now I'm happy with that shape, I'm going to think about where I want to put it. I'm going to put it in the corner. Now, is it okay just to put my clay on like that? No, we have to use scratch and slip. Now, if you remember, we scratch into the clay in one direction and then cross over those lines in the other. Then we decide where we want to put the piece of clay on our slab, and we scratch those into the clay just to help them stick. Then the next step is to use your slip. So remember, when you use water to make a sort of glue on the clay, we rub both sides with water to make a glue, and then we cut into those lines that we made earlier again. And this will help it stick. Now the last step is to position the clay, and then you want to smooth the two surfaces together. So I put my finger in the water and I smooth the top layer onto the bottom all the way around, and that will ensure that the two stick together really well. Okay, so that's my first shape on my sculpture. Now I think I'm going to also make this rainbow shape on my next sculpture. So I'm going to take another piece of clay, and to make the rainbow shape I need to use the coil that I showed you how to make last week. So you roll your piece of clay backwards and forwards into a snake shape, a long snake sausage shape. Keep rolling, make sure that each part of the clay is even and not too thin. Remember, it's so important that we don't make the clay too thin. Okay, and I think I'm happy with that. Any thinner and it would be too thin. Now I could make a very big rainbow, but I don't think it's going to be strong enough. So I'm going to make a rainbow that size. So I'll just break the clay off and just test out where I want to put it. Now you can see it's still nice and thick, so it should be fine. So I need to scratch and slip on the bottom of this rainbow. Okay, both directions. And then I need to think about where I'm going to put it onto the slab and scratch and slip there. And then I need to use my slip, my glue, my clay glue. And then last of all, just scratch again with your knife. Okay, make sure they're nice and deep. And then I can place the two parts on top of each other, then get my finger in the water and smooth around again so that both parts are really well attached, and so that when the clay dries, it will not break away from each other. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Okay, and you can keep experimenting, keep deciding what shape you want to make. I made a spiral earlier. So to make the spiral, you might want to make a coil again, so the long snake-like shape, and then roll the clay just like we did when we were making our snails. Okay, you might want to stick that onto your sculpture. Now, year one, remember, scratch and slip every time you join two pieces of clay. Okay. The last thing you might want to do is, once you've put in all of your pieces of clay in the right place, you might want to do some printing into the clay. Now, these are special prints that we can use at school, and you just press into the clay gently and it makes a pattern. Let me try a different one. You might want to add some patterns to your clay work. If you don't have these at home, what you could do is you could use a small stick, or you could use the side of your knife to just press patterns into the clay. And you can see that's actually a lot clearer. So I'm going to do a circular shape there. There we go. And I might twist my knife to make a sort of another different type of circle. Here, there we go. It makes a slight hole. Okay, so it's up to you. You can work at designing the shapes and the prints that you want to go in your clay. It's up to you what you decide to do. Last thing you might want to do is create a pattern around the edge of your clay. So you could either use, so if you see I'm making dots, you could make zigzags, you could use these print tools to press into the clay. You don't need to pick your sculpture up, you can leave it flat and press into it. I'm just holding it up so you can see. Okay? It's really up to you. I will show you Kandinsky's pictures to give you some ideas, and then you can work away at any shapes and lines and patterns that you would like to. So good luck, you two. Bye for now.